What's up, y'all? Believe in Kentucky, Believe Network, Cole Park, Vinny Hardy, Cole Park, catspaws.com. Y'all check out all his work right there. Cole, man, you back from Nashville, just had you on since pre Gonzaga, whatever that was, we watched Friday. Oh, you were in the building for that at Bridgestone, so we got to backtrack a little bit as we wait for this Indiana game. Whew, you saw the beat down firsthand, man. So it's, I know we're beating a dead horse, but got to get your thoughts on it, man.
Yeah, I mean, goodness. You go into that game, we talked about it a little bit, but after losing North Carolina the way you did, you didn't score a
Mm-hmm.
field goal for almost like 10 minutes in the second half um, to completely choke away that game. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. North Carolina wasn't playing good basketball in Rupp Arena. I mean, I think even whether he should have or not, Andrea Yelovich said that after the game. He said it's not like it was anything they were doing. Like it was Kentucky. Kentucky choked and lost that one. So you go into the game against Gonzaga in Nashville. You know Gonzaga is a really good team. You know that, quite frankly, they've led the series with Kentucky since this little scheduling agreement started. Kentucky's only win over them was the impressive comeback in Seattle last year. They won by 1 point in overtime after being down big in at halftime. I was in Seattle for that as well. Climate
Okay.
Pledge Arena, home of the
Mm-hmm.
Kraken. But you get started with the game and you don't really know what to expect. You know it's important. You know it's one that Kentucky needs to win. There was a lot of emphasis going into that. Um, but luckily, they didn't make you wonder long because they didn't score a field goal for the first 9 minutes of the game. They started a game with no field goals. Uh, Mind you, it got to a point. It got to a point in this one where Kentucky found itself trailing 19-2. And with all of that going on, it was Nashville. It was a very home crowd for Kentucky, very blue, and
Mm-hmm.
boy were they mad. I mean, the boos, the heckling, the vitriol spewed at that team.
Mm-hmm.
And Coach Pope, I mean, I was someone right behind the media row. I heard him shout clear as day when it was pretty quiet. He said, "Mark Pope, take your bag and go home." Like it was frustration. Frustration that Mark Pope took on the chin afterwards. You know, he didn't push back on any of it. He didn't push back on what DeMarcus Cousins tweeted. He didn't push back on the boos. He took it all on the chin, but God, I mean, that was it's not enough to say that Kentucky lost badly because Kentucky was never even remotely in that game. It looked in a home Nashville environment. Ranked Kentucky, you can't say that anymore. They're not ranked
Yeah.
anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Ranked Kentucky looked like a bye game for Gonzaga. It looked like Gonzaga was playing a mid to low major at their home arena and just taking care of business. 19-2.
Yeah.
They got a safety somehow. I don't know. Like because and both of those, by the way, were 1 for 2 trips from the free throw line, I believe.
Yeah.
So it wasn't
Yeah.
even like you could say, well, at least they're hitting their free throw. No, they went 1 for 2 on both of those. Um, I think by the end of that game as a whole, Kentucky had yeah, they ended up 7 for 31, but they didn't hit a three-pointer for so long. It was Brandon Garrison who hit the first one. He's just what can you even say about it, really? I mean, it, not the first one. Brandon Garrison hit one later. He hit one against North Carolina, but
Yeah. He was the
just
he was the sniper of those two games.
Brandon Garrison's your best sniper. I mean, Brandon Garrison who got benched on Tuesday. I It sounds like I'm exhausted and just thinking about that game makes me tired. Like everything about it was just a disaster from start to finish. A short press conference, the boos ringing out. I ended up finishing that game in the media room because the Wi-Fi just would not work on the court.
Mm, mm,
Um, that's a frequent problem in Nashville for the SEC tournament. I figured it might be a little bit different for a more one-on-one game. No, was not.
no.
So I finished that one in the media room. Um, and man, that was just it was tough. It was tough to watch that. And I'm not someone who, I think sports are always more fun to cover when the team you're covering is good. But I'm not the kind of person that goes into these games saying I care a ton what the end result is. I like sports. I want a good product. I want to watch a good game. If Kentucky loses a really good game, I don't go home in a bad mood. You know, I've got Boston College on my TV losing to UMass right now. Nothing can hurt me. Nothing can inflict a wound on my body. We're double digits in the second half to UMass, by
Mm,
the way.
mm,
Let's go BC. But there's certain times covering sports, whether you care about the end result or not, that you just watch a game and I felt sad. And I had a 4 hour drive back after that. I had my predecessor, Aaron Gershon's wedding the next day. I had 4 hours to drive back and simmer on that one in the night. Got back at like 1 a.m. or whatever, because you lose an hour as well. But it was just sad and disappointing. And it's kind of like DeMarcus Cousins tweeted. It looked like they had no heart. It looked like they had no
mm,
heart.
mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, you know, hate to be a dead horse, but that's what everybody's doing because that's what we are still trying to wrap our heads around what we've been seeing get kind of progressively worse. The Louisville game, the score is closer than the middle of that game really was. Michigan State was a whooping. North Carolina, you just gave it away because you played worse than them down the stretch. It's like you said, they weren't setting the world on fire. If they're being honest, they just they sucked a little less. And now the debacle Friday. So
It
two,
wasn't even just they sucked a little less. It was just that a basketball team was able to score a basket at some point. At some point, the basketball team was able to score a basket,
yeah, yeah,
and the other one wasn't. So
yeah. The home team couldn't. So yeah, but you know, there as a kid, everybody talked about the '84 team in the Final Four that went 3 for 33. That lost to Georgetown, and that's what we kind of saw in Rep Arena. Uh, I was talking about this earlier. I don't buy the fact that this roster is poorly constructed because 3 months ago it was the greatest thing ever, meticulously manufactured and put together all the pieces. I'm not saying Josh should be called for, but if somebody else was managing this roster, would they get more out of it? Would the old Bum Phillips line, the old coach from the Oilers in the '70s? They always said he could take Hisen and beat Yorn. He could turn around and take Yorn and beat Hisen. If somebody else was overseeing this, would they get more out of it? Or if some whatever off the court stuff happens that could affect any team, would they have handled that better? Would that have been, it's just stuff you kind of think about when you see a team that's not at 100%, but still got enough in the tank to, go out there if they hustle and not get blown off the court by 40 to Gonzaga. You would think a point guard is important. Jalen Lowe is important. Uh, you should have had another one. That part of the roster should have been constructed better. But you still got, second year Brandon Garrison. Guys do better in year two in my system. And all we've heard is how good he's going to be and all his potential and all his upside. and still had shooters out there. And second year Chandler, second year Noah, second year out. But I don't know.
Minor note there, not there, but minor side note. Pete Thamel confirms that Louisville's Chris Bell missed the Kentucky game with injury. Top draft prospect is confirmed to have a torn ACL.
Hmm.
Unfortunate, but nonetheless, back to Kentucky basketball.
Mm-mm-mm.
See, I would push back on that a little bit. I do think, based on some things we've been hearing, there's a lot of problems with Kentucky athletics right now.
Yeah.
NIL,
Hmm.
JMI.
Yeah.
Not going to get too into the weeds on that at the moment. I do think Mark Pope might benefit from a general manager. I don't know, just a
Mm.
thought to throw out there. But where I would push back is that this team wasn't poorly constructed, because I think it was. I think it was poorly constructed. I think it was hastily constructed too, because Kentucky got a lot of the players Kentucky was targeting early in that portal cycle went elsewhere, and then they started splashing. And I think that not all of these pieces fit together the best, but I also think that the idea for this roster was not as bad as the actuality of this roster. See, I do think you should have had a backup point guard. That was a given. Now, granted, you did lose a Caden Lewis to decommitment, which fair, and Travis Perry transferred, again, fair. But you should have still had a backup point guard. On the flip side, though, yeah, I mean, you would have thought Brandon Garrison would have taken a bigger jump year one to year two. He hasn't. If anything, in some ways, I think he's regressed a little bit in certain areas. Trent Noah, one of your better shooters, has been dealing with kind of ankle injury throughout the season from that season opener. He had a strong game against North Carolina Central. I mean, it wasn't setting the world on fire, but it looked more like what you expected out of year two Trent Noah. But when you look at the shooting, one, this team isn't as good of a shooting team as last year's team was.
Right.
But you could have said that even before the game started being played. This team didn't have as many pure shooters as last year did. But even some of the ones you do have, you brought in Cam Williams to be a shooter. Is Cam Williams a lethal scoring threat from beyond the arc right now? No, he's not. I mean, he can hit a few, and I'm not saying he can't be, but do you think Cam Williams is striking fear into the other teams the way some of last year's shooters were? No, he's not. In fact, he didn't even come in until the 12-minute mark of the second half against North Carolina Central. Whether or not that was to make a statement, to make a point, I don't know what he's like behind the scenes right now, but he just hasn't been what you thought he was going to be. And a lot of these players have been like that. I think this roster was poorly constructed and is a poorly constructed roster for a lot of reasons. I don't think that's all on Pope. But I also think that the part that is on Pope, on paper, it shouldn't be as poorly constructed as the actuality of it is, because players are not playing up to their potential. They're not playing up to what they were expected to be. I mean, even if we've been seeing him make some strides lately, he had a really good game against North Carolina Central. And he's had some good games lately, but Otega Owe, preseason SEC player of the year. Has he played like an SEC player of the year? No. Hasn't even played like a top 5 SEC player of the year lately. I mean, this season, if you were just to take away all the names, just like straight up post the stats, post some highlights, but like cover the players, like the little black covering effect they do, like, can you guess who this player is in those little games? If you'd have just posted his highlights and his stats and asked someone, is this an SEC player? They'd be like, no, of course it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like the second or third option on an SEC team that's maybe middle of the pack. And granted, maybe that's what they're going to be this year, because there's a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of SEC teams that are struggling this year. Let's not.
Yeah.
Last year was fantastic with 14 out of 16 teams making the field, but let's not act like they're going to get even close to that this year, because they are not. You look around this league, there are teams that are struggling, and even some teams that aren't struggling, they reek of fraudulent. They just do. I'm not gonna go too much into it. I don't want to get too much bulletin board material, but there's a lot of teams in this league right now that are either struggling or just reek of being really fraudulent to me. So it's a weaker league. Kentucky might still be able to pick up some games. And weaker leagues compared to last year. It's not the Big East is struggling this year. Let's
Mhm.
it's probably stronger in the Big East, but compared to last year, it is going to be a weaker SEC. Um, and also Kentucky's part of that because Kentucky this year is not as good as Kentucky last year. And just imagine when we were all praising this roster, telling someone that because that's disappointing. But um, I don't know that they'd be better with a different coach. I don't know that with some of the issues they have going on, both on the recruiting NIL front and some of the roster construction front. I don't know that it would make a ton of difference. It might make some. I mean, I don't know. Maybe.
I mean,
But
it's Izzo or few lose by 35 to Gonzaga Friday.
I don't think Izzo or Few would have this team the way it is right now, though.
Dusty May,
So
would he lose to Gonzaga by
probably not.
35 Friday?
Probably not realistically. But we also won't. Well, Dusty, I guess at Michigan is can't really speak on that, but he's only been there a couple years now. Izzo's had bad losses in his career. He's had bad teams in his career. I mean, bad by
Hey,
Michigan State standards,
yeah,
but
he has. He has. He's they called Tubby Smith 10 loss Tubby for, I mean, quick. They stuck that on him quick. Look how many 10 loss seasons Tom Izzo has had. I mean, he's great and all timer, and that national championship that he won is older than you. I'm just saying. I mean, you weren't even
yes.
born when he won it. I mean, he's great. Tom Izzo, tournament coach. I get it, but I'm just saying he had a lot of 10 loss seasons, and nobody calls him 10 loss Tommy. Maybe they should. That's all. I have went on record and said that before, but
Yeah.
but this is what we're saying here. We gotta worry about ourselves. We can't really, and this ain't cutting it.
Tom Izzo has a team this year. Michigan State, like
Yeah.
I know it feels funny coming from the Kentucky reporter because I watch, but like you look at everything they've done this year. Michigan State is good. They're a good basketball team this year. He's got a good squad this year, and a lot of respect to Izzo. Also, a really great interview, good coach. But I guess what I was getting at, just do I think Kentucky can turn this around? Yes, I do. I think if Mark Pope shows more of what he showed us against NC Central, not really taking that crap, benching players who aren't putting in the effort he needs, playing players who are going to give you the effort, even if they're not necessarily your best players, if they're going to give you everything they got. There's a quote he said about Trent Noah that really stuck out to me. It really stuck out to me after that game because he was asked about, what did you like out of what you saw from Trent Noah tonight? And he first started saying, I like Trent every night. But then he goes, this is an exact quote. Trent is not a perfect player. There are some things that are complicated for him, areas of this game where he struggles. But he's all in. He's fully invested, and he's going to give you everything he's got every time he's on the floor. And he's pretty effective at doing it. That, to me, that is a message. That's sending a message. And that's not the only message he sent because he was asked. Jalen Lowe and Cam Williams, they didn't get in until 12 minutes left in the second half. Brandon Garrison got benched. He played 7 minutes.
Yep.
He said he was asked about it, what kind of maybe the message has been about the effort he got from some of his guys. All he said, yeah, we have a standard we have to live up to, and we're not. We have to, and we're going to keep fighting until we do. And then asked about Brandon Garrison getting benched, kind of laying into him in that timeout, he said, we just have a lot of growing up to do right now. And we'll grow. We have good guys. We have competitive guys. But we also don't really know what it means to compete yet, which is terrifying, but we'll learn. We're learning fast. So you read between the lines in some of those things. There's some changes being made.
Yeah.
JQ coming back, I think is going to make this team better because Malachi Marino, way better than we expected him to be, playing better than Brandon Garrison right now. He is a true freshman in the SEC. He's going to get bodied when he's playing some offense down low. He's going to get beaten on some boards. He's not a perfect basketball player. He's a freshman. When you get JQ back, that's going to help. The offense looked a bit more cohesive when Jalen started playing as well. You know, having a true point guard out there is really, really big. And if they can hit some shots, that I think they can be better. I think they can win big games. I think they can beat an opponent from a Power Five conference, God forbid. But if you want my honest opinion, I'm not even saying how people were feeling about after the Purdue exhibition, because after the Purdue exhibition, I mean, good Lord, the reactions were wild. If you ask me, can Kentucky get better from this? Can they get a ranking next to their name again? Can they make the tournament? I would say absolutely they can. If you ask me, can Kentucky make a second weekend? I would say maybe. Depends on the draw. But sure. If you ask me, can this team go to the Final Four or win a national title? I would tell you right now, no. I don't see
No.
that happening with this team. I don't see anything with like not even just right now. I'm not even just like stating the obvious, like right now they're not on that caliber. I'm saying I think even if they turned it around, their ceiling is still lower than that. I
Which,
see this team lower than I did going into the season, significantly, and
yeah.
understandably so. But in terms of that, I think that, you know, they've said a lot about the assignment banner number 9. I would just say not this year. It's
Mm-hmm.
not going to happen this year. And the sooner people accept that, the sooner. I almost feel like part of the magic of last year, part of what made last year so special was how low the expectations were. And I get it, it's Kentucky. It should be high. It should be national championships. But last year, let's be honest. You looked at that roster, you looked at what happened in the offseason, you're just like, see what happens. And then they beat Duke, and you're like, whoa. And then they won some big SEC games. They had a ton of ranked wins, and you're like, whoa. You almost didn't care that they got swept by Alabama and badly most of the time. You almost didn't care that your rival eliminated you in the Sweet 16 after you swept them in the regular season. You
Mm.
almost didn't care that they got blasted by Ohio State in Madison Square Garden because look at them, you know, like, oh, well, you know, they care. They love this place. They're saying all the
Mhm.
right things. They're trying. So sure. And going to the Sweet 16, like it was a magical season, but I think part of that magic came because we didn't expect much. And then you turn that right around and you give the expectations being on the moon. And you beat the number 1 team in the country in an exhibition play by a lot. And the expectations go farther than the moon. And granted, Purdue did just get blasted by Iowa State. We're not going to pretend TJ Otzelberger isn't one of the best coaches in the country. But regardless, South Dakota State legend, by the way. Regardless, it's just like a complete reversal of last year, where last year the expectations were much lower and they overperformed. Whereas this year the expectations were up here and they're playing down here. Can they get back to like here? Sure. I think so. Can they get up here? I don't think they can. I
They
really don't.
they tempered all the expectations by the way they played. I think his tenure's been out of order. I think we should have been saying this in year 1, taking your lumps because you threw the roster together even faster because you just got hired and had to get a staff and all this and the portal and you didn't have much time. If you tripped and stumbled out of the gate, okay, people would have been saying, I told you so because he ain't even won a tournament game yet. So he knew he couldn't do it. And then you have last year, this year, to where you figuring it out and you start to get it together. So stuff has kind of been flip flopped to me. My co-host on Cats Talk Wednesday, Terry Brown, says it though. He says, you look at the history of Kentucky, we know pretty quick. He said year 3, the guys that hang banners get to the Final Four in year 3. You know, we taking over for Rupp, making the game in 75. Uh, Patino had 2 years of probation, so that kind of set him back. But in '93, he makes a Final Four, should beat Michigan in the Fab Five. Tuppy, his first year, taking over for Patino. Now, Elite Eight first year, Final Four the second year. It doesn't take long if you're gonna succeed in this fishbowl with high expectations at Kentucky. And if you don't, we also know that kind of quick too. Billy G and Eddie Sutton. He had his demons. I think they got to the Elite Eight in '86, beat LSU 3 times, and then lose to them the fourth time. But so
Eddie
year three,
Sutton.
year three is going to be a big. Next year's going to be huge for Pope. Hey, Rick.
Got my copy right here. Also, I think it's. Oh yeah.
Oh, I got the SIG on there.
Anyway, the thing that just worries me about that, the part that has me the most concerned and the most careful about what I say about this team, I think, is I cover this team. I hear things. I'm here, the average, I'm not trying to say I'm above the average fan by any means, but like I would say I know things about this team that the average fan doesn't.
Well, sure.
I know things about Kentucky that the average team doesn't. That's why I'm here. That's what I do as my job. And even I don't know how much of it is just a Mark Pope problem. I don't know how much of it is the NIL JMI nonsense problem.
Oh, it's got to be.
I don't know how much of it is a Mitch Barnhart problem. I don't know what percentage is the problem here. And because of that, I was ranting about Boston College earlier to my friend. They're up, by the way, now, winning by 4. So
look at that.
Lord bless us. Can we beat UMass?
Down double figures to up 4. Look at that run their own.
That's my Power 5 school. Regardless, I was talking, but I was like, the thing that's the most frustrating right now about being a Boston College fan is you can look and say Earl Grant's not succeeding here, but do I think firing Earl Grant would solve the problem? No, I don't, because Boston College's problems are way bigger than who's the coach. Boston College's problems are bigger than recruiting. Boston doesn't care that much about Boston College. The money is not there. Boston College cares more about sports other than football and basketball. There's a lot of faults, and I'm not going to get all into Boston College for this whole tangent, but the point I'm making is because I don't know exactly where the split in the problem is, I don't know how to fix the problem. And granted, it's not my job to fix the problem. Right. So it's not my responsibility to, but like, I feel like there's certain things in sports you can look at and you can be like, well, maybe if they'd done this differently, or this is why it didn't work out for this person. I don't know that here. I think all like the Mark Pope, the recruiting, the JMI, the NIL, revenue sharing, the immediate transfer portal, the modern age of college athletics, Mitch Barnhart, I think all of those things play a factor in how we got here. But I don't know which one is the top problem right now, because they're all problems in different areas, but they're all capable of not being problems. I just don't know. And that's the weirdest part, is like a lot of people who are covering this team, I think you could ask anybody and they would tell you truthfully, even, people who know a lot, they would probably tell you still, I don't know at all. And I don't really know what they do about this. This JMI contract for NIL is through 2040.
Yeah.
Watch out, guys. The Cats are going to be back in 2041. Yes. Look forward to it.
Unless some kind of revision is made to where we can restructure, we can negotiate something.
The part that worries me, though, beyond just not even knowing all the problems, and I made this point, it's a column I might still end up writing because I'm considering it going into the Indiana game, but Kentucky fans for a long time have laughed at Indiana. Indiana, former blue blood, formerly hanging banners. Yeah. What have you done lately? What's been your ceiling lately? Going to the tournament now is a success for you. Making a second weekend is great. What's Kentucky been this decade? I mean, if you say this decade short, since 2019, Kentucky's been to one second weekend. They've missed the tournament. They got upset in the first round twice. They right now they can do it. They can win these games. Right now, they would not make the field. They don't have their best win is Valparaiso.
Yeah.
And I'm not hearing that Valparaiso is not that bad because they went to overtime with Marquette. Shaka Smart's allergic to the transfer portal for some reason, even though arguably his best player at Marquette is a former transfer, and he just decided this is a really good cake. I'm gonna never eat it again. But regardless, Valparaiso cannot be your best win.
Mm-hmm.
Every time they've played a team with, and this sounds disrespectful. I hate when people say this because I do like small schools. I like watching smaller teams. Every time they played a team with a pulse,
Yeah.
they lose and they look bad doing it. They beat North Carolina Central last night and they didn't look very good doing it. I don't know how you make a 36-point win look like a loss, but that press conference with Mark Pope was 7 minutes and sounded like they just got upset. Like it's not clicking. And the reason I was going to make this column after the Gonzaga game, the reason that this Gonzaga scheduling agreement is the way it is, right? Kentucky wanted to play Gonzaga for a while, but Gonzaga said, we're not just going to come play you at Rupp Arena for nothing. They said, we think we're bigger than that. We're Gonzaga. I get that we're not in a power conference. We're not just going to come play you at Rupp Arena and that be that. You got to come here. Kentucky's like, we're Kentucky. We're not just going to go do a home and home with Gonzaga. So they do this whole scheduling agreement nonsense that includes 2 games at Rupp, 1 game in Nashville, 1 game in Seattle, 1 game in Spokane Arena, and then finally they'll go to the Kennel. We've now played 4 of these games with Gonzaga.
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky's 1-3. 1-3 in those games, and the one win they got was because they had to come from behind in overtime and make a Herculean comeback effort, an improbable comeback effort that saw one player literally sacrifice his season to help you force overtime where you won in overtime. So in this, Kentucky, bigger than Gonzaga, agreed to this big nonsensical deal that jumps through way too many hoops because they were too big to just do a home and home. They're 1-3, and the one win they have is one of the most improbable things I've ever seen in my entire life. So what, like, I get the standard, and I still like a lot of the messaging Mark Pope has. And I think that in a lot of ways, there's a lot of people at Kentucky who have an idea of what needs to happen. But there's also a lot of people who I think just aren't coming to terms with the fact that the sport as we know it is different and will never be the same. And I'm going to be honest with you. I was supporting NIL, players getting paid. I think players should be able to transfer at least once without sitting out. Because sometimes you get lied to. Coaches can be con men. That's life. Okay. I even support revenue sharing. I think we need a CBA going forward because that's where we're going. Just make it a full-on pro league at this point. I don't care. But I had to ask myself honestly, is this the sport I fell in love with? And the answer is no, it's not. It is different now. It is a different sport than it was 10 years ago when I was growing up. The things I was watching in the sport I was watching do not exist anymore. And if you continue to pretend that they do, you're going to keep falling behind. And the ultimate grand point of this column was that Kentucky needs to understand that it is not too big to fail. It is not too big to become a fallen giant. And if you let your foot off the gas and you let this continue the way it's continuing, you're going to be one. Because those boos in Nashville weren't because they couldn't hit a field goal for 9 minutes. Those boos in Nashville weren't even just because this season has been bad. Those boos in Nashville are because Kentucky basketball has made 1 second weekend since this decade started, the 2020s. And even when they did make the second weekend, you knew I love those guys last year. By the time the tournament started, if you'd asked me, what's Kentucky's odds of winning the national title, I'd have said 0. They're not going to win it all. They might go. They might make a run. They might be fun. Are they going to win it all? No. So in the last 6 years, Kentucky basketball has made one second weekend and didn't feel like a credible threat to win it all doing it.
Mm-hmm.
What's the tournament success? And though that second weekend is apart from a nothing game against Providence, where they then immediately got blasted by Kansas State and their point guard Marquise Noel with Calipari's the second Oscar Sheba year. I don't even count that as a success. I get that's a tournament win, but that's not a success. That's not a success. Apart from so really and truly, the second weekend has been the only tournament success they've had since 2019. And yet people still want to act like they're bigger than Indiana. The results aren't proving it. They're not. And I'm not saying Kentucky and Indiana are equals. I still think Kentucky's bigger than Indiana. But the point I'm making is that if you just, again, same as I said with Owe, if you took the brands away from it, took the logos away from it, just put the stats side by side, didn't say a word about it, said, here are these two teams, you'd be like, they're not that different. They're really not.
Yep. And Lamar Wilkinson is going to come in hot if he,
They just dropped 113 on Penn State. We talked about it before the show. Is Kentucky dropping 113 on Penn State right now? No. And do I think Kentucky can beat Indiana? Yes, I do. I would actually predict it right now. I'm not. I know how I sound. I'm not so defeatist about this situation. I will. If you ask me to give a prediction right now, I'm saying Kentucky's going to beat Indiana. I just gut feeling. Maybe it's just hope or a plea, but I think it's going to happen. But realistically speaking, if you just ask me, could Kentucky put up 113 on Penn State right now and win by 40? I would say probably not. They're probably not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
I don't know.
What a place to be. Such a weird spot. Such a weird spot. And yeah, definitely tempered the expectations. The Georgetown loss, and then the way the season started. So yeah, it's not fitting. And they have to be. Maybe you're right. Maybe the roster was hastily constructed. Maybe, but I think in their wildest dreams they didn't see it being like this. Even with not having the full complement of players. Okay, where Jalen's hurt in the blue white game. All right, we already know we're without JQ. Okay, and even with some dings to the depth, they still had to see things going better than this.
Yeah, I mean, you got to imagine that. I get it that those Calipari teams sometimes would take a weird loss to an Evansville or a UNC Wilmington. But if we're being realistic, what has happened this season is probably the worst case scenario for what could have happened. Even like you said, if you had said all of the factors that have happened, I still think you would have said, well, especially going into the season, because we didn't know what some of these teams would be. You say, well, they might still pick off Michigan State. They did not. Michigan State's very, very good. They whooped them. You'd say, well, maybe North Carolina. And then you'd be like, well, no, North Carolina actually did play really badly in that game, but Kentucky couldn't hit a field goal for 10 minutes and let it slip away right at the end. And then you'd say, well, maybe they kept it close with Gonzaga. No, they did not.
Yeah.
And it's just disappointing. You also would have said out of the two exhibitions, it was a joke at the time because things hadn't gone quite this badly yet. But literally, if you just said, yeah, they go 1-1 in their exhibitions, you'd be like, okay, so they lose to Purdue and beat Georgetown. Not that they beat Purdue and look like giant killers and then just absolutely get crushed by Georgetown. And Georgetown is a good basketball team. I'm not trying to say that they're bad. But is Georgetown, look at their resume. They're a good basketball team. They might make the tournament. Are they a contender? No, they are not. They're not. And that's okay. They're building back. That program is in a rough spot. That program is in a rough spot, and they're working on building it back. But that's not a contender. And maybe I'll say Michigan State is, but if you ask me, is North Carolina a title contender? I'd probably say no. I don't think. Realistically speaking, there can only be so many actual title contenders in 1 year. I don't think North Carolina is. I
Nope.
don't know if Gonzaga is. I'm not holding the Michigan loss, and that was a bad Michigan loss, but Michigan also is just fantastic. Michigan might be the best team in college basketball this year, if we're being honest with ourselves. Yaxel Lindeboard, Dusty May, whole squad. They're really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a third game in a row. I'm not holding that against them too much. Could Gonzaga be a title contender? Maybe. I don't really see them in like the actual top category, maybe like the second, category, but not the
Mm-hmm.
top one. North Carolina, I don't. Michigan State, maybe, maybe. But Georgetown's not. They're
Yep.
not. And Kentucky isn't either right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they'll get there. Not this
Yep.
year. I think, and I'm not, again, I want to emphasize, I'm not giving up on the season. I probably am more positive on this season than I even sound right now because I was fired up by what I saw from Mark Pope against North Carolina Central. Benching Brandon Garrison, finally kind of laying into him a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
holding low and Cam out until the second half, playing players who looked like they wanted to be there and were giving it all they had. That's what you got to do. I mean, this is a guy who played under Rick Pitino. He knows how to do this. He's a guy who knows how to do this. So getting JQ back soon, maybe even before the St. John's game, dare I say, maybe even for the St. John's game. We'll see. But this team can be better. And I think they'll start trending in that direction. Like I said, I would actually predict them to upset Indiana. And it would be an upset right now. If we're being honest with ourselves, I think Indiana will be favored when that line drops. Even in Rupp Arena, I might say Indiana might be favored. We'll see. Actually, has that line dropped yet? Am I just like talking crazy right now? Just being completely wrong? Is that there's a possibility in that? CBS does not have one right now, but regardless, I'm not giving up on this team. I just think we got a little over our heads early on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot more problems than just who's the coach right now for Kentucky basketball. You look at some of the recruiting news, it's not good right now. No. It's not good right now. Nope. Boston College blew the lead again, by the way. 73-72. 1 minute and 28 left. God.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. It's a weird spot to be. It's a really weird spot to be. And it's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah. And who knows how long it'll continue, or administration changes, or people in new positions, or tenures come to an end, or there's a lot of stuff in flux, and it's a weird spot. And recruiting, negative recruiting, JMI not closing the deal, inexperience. It's a big pie. A lot of pieces to this uncertainty pie. So
it reminds me of those games, like what's that board game or whatever that's got the car that you're trying to get, like the traffic jam game, you know what I'm talking about? There's a bunch of cars on the board and you have to like move them around, but you're trying to get one single piece out of the board and you have to move all these pieces around. But like this piece is blocked by this piece and this piece is blocked by this piece. So you got to find the first piece to move and then move them in an order to finally free the one you want to get. That's a really convoluted way of saying I don't know where the solution starts because I don't know which piece of this pie is the first roadblock.
Yeah. It's a bad predicament to be in. Sorry about that. My phone, my bad. Sorry for that noise, everybody. So, with that, we wait till Saturday and See what happens with the Hoosiers. The rivalry is renewed. They come to Rupp playing well. We wonder if guys will just play with effort the whole game. That's kind of, will we find, if you get the ball stolen from you, will you chase the guy down and block his shot? That's where
not 100% on this team. 100% of people on this team, not 100% of people on this team would say yes to that question.
Yeah,
but
yeah. So
that's why it's like what Chris Beard said after the Ole Miss game, and I think Pope is starting to do that, and I like that. I like that fire. But Chris Beard got asked after one of Ole Miss's losses, what do you do? Actually, the player got asked something, and he cut him off and said, we could play different players. If they're not doing what they need to do, we could play different players.
There you go.
Right now, I think the thing that makes me feel so strongly about that too, look at last year's team. I get Otega Owe now. His expectations wasn't that last year. Kobe Bryant was a sharpshooter. There was a lot of good players in that team. Amari Williams in the NBA. But do you think if you'd have told somebody 5 years before that while Calipari was still here, showed them that roster and where they came from and their stats, and been like, this is going to be your favorite Kentucky team? You've been like, what? Why? Where are the stars? Where are the superstars?
Yes.
Didn't need them.
Yes.
And there were some I'm not saying there were no superstars in that team. There were some very good players in that team, but compared to the historically recognized superstars, you didn't need them because you had players who played with everything they had and played their role well. And that is something that, like I just said with the Trent Noah quote I gave earlier, it seems like that's what Pope is getting at. And I like that. That's what I want to see from Kentucky. That's the best way forward for the Kentucky basketball this season, in my opinion. You're Kentucky. You should be getting superstars, but superstars are not the end-all be-all. And it's really easy to think that just getting the best players is going to make you the best team, and that is not the case. There's a really good quote I heard. I might have even said it on the show before, but it was given by Gary Parrish on CBS Eye on College Basketball podcast. And he said this after the, I want to say the Michigan State-Kentucky loss. He said, I watched a basketball team beat a bunch of basketball players. I couldn't have said it better. You have to be a basketball team, and getting players who are going to play with everything they have, especially right now with where the season's at, play those players. Keep those guys in the floor. They may not necessarily have as high of a ceiling as some of the other guys in the roster, but if those guys with a higher ceiling aren't living up to it, got to do what you got to do. It's kind of like those old any sports game ever, Madden, 2K, the old college games, the current college games. You can actually see it happen if you're playing like a franchise. If a player's morale is super low, their overall goes down. They might be an 83 overall, but they're unhappy, so they're playing like a 75. So maybe if they're playing like a 75, this guy, he might usually be an 83, and his backup might usually be a 77. But if he's playing like a 75 right now, I'm playing the 77 kid. Let him go out there. Let him let him improve his stock. Let him get out there and give you everything he's got. Best case scenario, it motivates that 83 to get back to an 83, lights a fire under him. Worst case scenario, be with people who want to be here. Play with people who want to give you what they got. You ain't got to be the best player. You don't have to be the most talented player. But if you can't give effort, I don't know what to tell you.
And if you're not going to have the superstars, you got to have full buy-in, full max effort from the players you have. If you have the superstars, well, They can be managed. Other people, other places have superstars. We say what you want about the Endicow's tenure. He had the superstars, and those first years when it was going well, he made that work too. That doesn't mean it was easy, but they always were peaking and playing their best ball at the right time. I mean, all the talent that was coming in that had to be managed and made to fit cohesively into a roster. And say what people love to say. He just rolled the balls out there. There was more to it than that. He gets knocked for that, but hey, you had to have Brandon Knight and Julius Randle and all those guys playing cohesively as a team. The Harrison twins, all of that. That all had to be different approaches. Can be successful a lot of different ways, but just got to figure out how to get through and get everybody on the same page. So
I agree, and I've said it before on this episode, but I want to emphasize again because I know this episode's kind of just been me ranting a lot of the time. I realize that, but I'm not out on Pope. I'm not even fully out on this team. Do I think their ceiling is lower than I did going into it? Sure. But I think this team can still find success. They can still be a good team. They can still be a likable team, even. I think Pope can still succeed here. But right now, it's not going well. Nope. We've all been there. For how many times in your life have you looked around and been like, man, it's just not going well right now? And it gets better. It can. It absolutely can. You can turn it around, but that takes effort. That takes, it's like Will Stein said in his introductory press conference. He was talking about something completely different. I'm just going to pull the quote with no context because I can. He said, it's not going to be easy. It's not meant to be easy. But it's what you got to do. You got to do the work, and I think they can. I'm here to hopefully see that happen. But we have to acknowledge that right now it is not good. It is really not good, and things have to change, and it seems like maybe things have started to change.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. I'm not out on it, but I am down on it.
Oh, yeah. That's a good way to put it. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. And until we see some different results against better teams, we'll continue to feel this way. So another opportunity Saturday. Let's see what they do with it. See what we're talking about next week after the Hoosiers come to town. So look forward to seeing your write-ups, questions in the pressers.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I would say on Kentucky just before the last thing I'll say is just ignore everything I said. Indiana's not a blue blood. They're a fallen program. Cats are going to win on Saturday. Hoosiers are going down. That's all there is to say. That's how we'll move forward until we have a reason to go back on
it. There we go. There we go. On that note, we'll close out this episode of Believe in Kentucky on the Bleed Network. Rate, review, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, we appreciate it. Subscribe. If you listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave us 5 stars, write a little review, share it on your social media, tell your friends about it. All that stuff just helps us grow, helps other people find the show, and it really helps us out, and we appreciate it. So for Cole Park, this is Vinny Hardy. Go Cats. See y'all next time on Believe in Kentucky.
Noted football school, Indiana.